Hello, I'm Benjamin Edwards, and this is episode 3 of my Kerbal Space Program career, Lone Star Interplanetary Colonization. I know it's been a week since my last episode, but here we go. So one of the things I've done is I have built this. It is a small satellite. It has a radar altimeter on it, and it has a scansat multispectral sensor. And I am going to put it, if I can go the correct way, into a polar orbit. So I've probably turned a lot farther than I need to, but this rocket has just enough delta V to get me into orbit, even going like this. So the scansat multispectral sensor, it'll go through and map the biomes, and the radar altimeter will map height. So it's just two different ways of mapping the planet Kerbin. So this is just the test run, so I can start mapping for the scansat add-on. And you have to put it into a polar orbit so that you eventually get the entire planet, since the planet rotates. So by launching it, if I was to put it into an equatorial orbit, it would only get the equator. So we're just going up. I'm going to try to at least start out by putting it into a 100-kilometer orbit, and from there we'll adjust its orbit so now I'm going to create a maneuver to circularize my orbit. So have to play with it. So apoapsis. So there we go. And then we'll just aim it and wait and hope that I actually have enough delta V to do this after all, since I decided to start turning early. So I have about a minute, actually 30, 40 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and start my burn now. Actually, I needed to wait longer. So I got it mixed up into my head that you actually want to take your estimated burn and split the difference so that half of it's before that time and half of it's after. And here I was actually doubling the burn time. So I'll go ahead and wait until about 15 seconds now, and then I will start burning again. So now we will burn. It's about another 20 seconds now, and this should circularize my orbit. So not a whole lot of fuel left, but I should still have just enough, and I do. But I did mess that up just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do, well, that's 158. So that's fine. So go ahead and delete that marker. So I'm going to put a maneuver here at my periapsis, correction, apoapsis, to raise up my periapsis. So now we just go ahead, and since I'm actually in orbit, I'll deploy my fairing. And this is essentially what my little satellite looks like. And I'll go ahead and start extending my solar panels. I haven't upgraded enough yet, so I can't actually assign action groups, which is why I'm having to extend all of these solar panels one at a time. But that looks like that's all of them. So now we just have to wait, and I will go ahead and time accelerate. Now it's only a 46 meters per second burn, so ultimately I'm not having to burn much of anything. But I am going to go ahead and disengage my rocket, the main body. So that way all I have is my more efficient Terrier engine. And I'm going to roll so that I'm looking down, or I have the satellites looking down. I know they probably don't need to be facing the planet for them to work. It just has to be in that orbit. But it's just one of those little kind of OCD things that I have. So go ahead, we'll time accelerate. Again, just to catch up on this. So I will start burning at the 1 second mark. It's a 0 second burn, but it is also a different engine. And I passed it a little bit, but it's still pretty good for me. So I am in a mostly polar orbit, so I should still be able to get all of my data. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open these up, and then deploy my antenna. So now I will just, I don't have any science from that. Analyze data, I don't have any science from that. But we'll bring up, that was the wrong thing. That's my life support. We'll bring up scansat, and as you can see here, it's starting, we'll turn off the track. It's starting to actually scan the planet. And just looking at the various, I'll go ahead and I'll leave it on rectangular. So the slope, and it is starting to record the various biomes there on the planet. So now we'll just leave this here and let it do its thing. And as it continues to map the planet, it will eventually go through and record everything. So now on to other things. Okay, now we are back on the launch pad. This time I have 2 contracts to take 4 tourists on a suborbital hop. So Haley, Wilkin, Ruckus, and Stelgel are going to be flying in this. I have the hitchhiker pod, so it's actually fully capable. That's what's holding the 4 tourists. So I'm going to fix my staging just a little bit to put my 2 drug chutes to have them pop first. So before you launch, always remember to check your staging. So I'm going to turn on my SAS, and we are going to launch. So shortly after, I'm going to go ahead and tilt up about 10 degrees. A little bit too much right there. So my rocket itself is wanting to go and do weird and unusual things. It doesn't want to fly straight the way I want it to fly straight. Which is really weird because in testing, this actually flew pretty well. So now we're just going to maintain this. Yeah, it's definitely not wanting to do what I want it to do. So let's see if I can turn it to where it's at least going back eastward. Not that it matters right now, because all it really needs to do is get these people up to 70 kilometers. At which point they will have exited the atmosphere. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to angle up my descent a little bit more. Try to push that apoapsis as high as I can, as fast as I can. With really as little horizontal velocity as I can get. The sad thing is that because of the weird launch that this rocket went into, I've pretty much what I was originally intending to do is not what's going to be happening. At least not to the fullest extent that I'm wanting it to have happen. So we'll see if I can still get it to work, but I don't know. So our apoapsis is up above 70K, so that's as high as they need to go. So we are going to shut my engines down and basically just coast up until we cross that 70 kilometers, and our 4 tourists have made their suborbital space flight. Now we come to what I was initially wanting to do. So we'll see if I can still kind of make it work. So I'm just going to have to turn to where I'm kind of pointing back. Now I want to land as these Kerbinauts, the tourists, as close to KSC as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt a boost back burn to bring them back to the KSC. And you can see that I'm bleeding off all of my surface speed in the direction I was traveling to start launching me back in the other direction. Now the boost back burn, this is actually what the SpaceX does with their first stage. As it launches, once the first stage detaches, it does a burn to bring it back to the landing site. And that's essentially what I'm trying to do here. And we will see just how well it works. Now I am traveling back to the KSC. So I have my horizontal velocity in the other direction. So right now, I am going to turn my ship so that I can toss that off. And basically by trying to toss it off to the side, which again didn't really work because it's just kind of seems to be rolling over above me, I was trying to get it out of the way so that it wouldn't come back and end up hitting me. And yet it's pretty much right above me, as you can see, which is definitely not where I wanted it to be at. So we'll see if that ends up being bad or not. As far as my intent for landing back at the KSC, obviously that's not going to happen. I'm going to overshoot it. However, I am coming into the atmosphere, so I am starting to reheat and slow down. So it is likely that I may not overshoot it as much, but I will unfortunately overshoot it. I managed to get a lot closer during the testing, so now that I'm actually recording it, obviously everything is going wrong. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to lower my landing legs, and that's just going to help to absorb some of the impact when I do land, depending on how fast I'm going. And I've deployed the 2 drogue chutes. That's going to actually help slow me down a lot more once they finally deploy. Excuse me. So, and there they go. My 2 drogue chutes have deployed, and you can already see it's cut probably 75% of my velocity just from that. And once I deploy the main chutes, then that'll end up slowing me down the rest of the way. I don't know where my upper stage went. And obviously it landed and destroyed itself somewhere. And wow, I was not paying attention there. I just barely deployed my parachutes in time to slow me down enough to land. Probably would not have survived that landing if I had not actually hit those parachutes when I did. Was landing in the grasslands, so obviously it's at a higher elevation than sea level. So you can see I'm at 713 meters. And all of the time I go through and I think that I'm landing at 0, and it's really not. So we'll go ahead. We'll see if I can do a crew report here, and I can. Lots of good science. I don't have any other experiments except to do an EVA report and take a surface sample. The only problem is now is that I can't get back up into the ship. Oh wait, maybe I can. Come on, Jebediah, you can do this. No, I can't. That's okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just recover Jebediah. And then we're going to turn, and we can see our tourist 1 over there. Now I could have just recovered it, as you can see, but I'm going to go and hit the fly so that I can actually recover it from here like this. There's not many things, I guess, not really OCD about, but I guess that works. And that's kind of one of them. So I now have all those contracts complete. I've ferried all of my tourists safely to their destination. So that is a mission that is ultimately now complete. So now that we're done with our tourists, we're going to see what new missions or contracts we can accept. Now, we have more contracts for tourists to actually haul 6, and they're all suborbital. So I could do it with just slight changing around of my tourist ship. However, I have several things. I have this position a satellite in a specific orbit, so I'm going to go ahead and take that. And since we're going to orbit, I'm going to take this one to test this Rovmax M1. It's basically a tire in space. So yes, this company, Kerbin, wants me to test a tire in space. This is test a hydraulic detachment manifold, basically a decoupler in orbit, and this one I have to get from 430 to 440 kilometers. So I'm going to take that, and then this one is to haul a Prometheus 3 LOS solid rocket booster in the flight above Kerbin. And basically all I have to do is get it up to 4 kilometers, but I have to get it going 420 to 570 meters per second within that altitude. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to accept that contract. And now I'm going to go and look at building this satellite. And so here we are in the vehicle assembly building. I have to build a satellite that can generate its own power, so it has to have solar panels on it. It has to have an antenna and then reach a specific orbit. So I'm going to start with this probe core right here, the Bell TRU. And we are going to build the actual satellite stage. So that's pretty much it. That should give me enough fuel to get me into the orbit that I need to go. I hope. We'll find out. So the other thing I have to have is it has to be able to communicate. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. And the other thing it has to do is it has to be able to generate its own power. So I have to have solar panels on it. So I am going to go with these and do this ×4 symmetry. And these will actually track the sun. So I probably don't need 4 of them, but I'm going to put 4. So the other things we need to do is we need to look at our contracts. So I have to take a Rovmax Model M1 wheel. So this right here. But I also have to test a hydraulic detachment manifold. This thing right here. Whoops. Let's only do 1 time symmetry for that. So I am going to put the tire on the hydraulic manifold like that. So there we go. There's my satellite. So now I'm actually going to build my launch vehicle. So I need to go into coupling. And actually this isn't very aerodynamic. So I am going to take the payload, not that one, no, and find a fairing that will work. And I'm not really finding one that'll fit. So I may just have to go with this. And so I'm building a fairing which will keep the rocket safe as it's going through orbit. So now we are going to build the actual rocket, and I need my fuel tanks first. So we're kind of going to be doing the same thing that we did with the last one, the actual launch stage for our tourist aircraft rocket. Except now we have to find these LOS rocket boosters. So have to go through and basically find this right here, the Prometheus 3-2 LOS rocket booster. And we are going to put if I can figure out what exactly it is that I'm doing. So we're going to put 2 of those on. And we're going to hope that that actually gives me more than enough power to get where I would need to go. So now we want some winglets on here. Just to help give us some control in flight. So, and now for the structural, put 2 of these on. That'll just hold it out there on the launch pad. And now, always check your staging. I'm going to have all three engines. Then we have the fairing. So, and there we go. So we are going to call this Satellite 1. And I will see you on the launch pad. So at this point, the episode has taken longer than I had anticipated it would. So we're going to go ahead and end it here. And in the next episode, we will launch our satellite and put it into orbit. So that's it for episode 3 of the Lone Star Interplanetary Colonization, my Kerbal Space Program career save. I'm Benjamin Edwards, and always remember, check your staging. Have a good night.